I'd like to call the Board of Light and Power March Board meeting to order. Danielle, would you call the roll, please?
Is absent. Director Knopf.
Here.
Director Poliak. Spelling.
Here.
Chairperson Westbrook.
Here. Can I get a motion to excuse Director Poliak and Crum for personal reasons?
Make the motion.
Motion second, discussion. Daniel?
Knopf.
Yep.
Welling.
Yes.
Westbrook.
Yes. Next item, tonight's meeting agenda. Can I get a motion?
Make the motion.
Okay. Motion second, discussion. All good.
Knopf.
Yes.
Welling.
Yes.
Westbrook.
Yes. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, any public comment tonight, Lynn? Anybody else? All right, we'll skip through that. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Seconding.
Motion and a second, Kurt. Any comments on KPIs or any of the content there?
I'm happy to entertain any questions you have, but I think they're all pretty straightforward.
Right, hearing none. Danielle, would you call the roll, please?
Knopf.
Yes.
Welling.
Yes.
Westbrook.
Yes. Can I get a motion to approve the 10 purchase orders totaling $2,984,651?
Make the motion.
Seconds, a lot of POs.
So I think we're kind of used to it this time of year. We're looking forward to next year's capital improvement plan. So I believe 7 of the 10 POs there are for next year's projects. So circuit 21 and 22 rebuild, and the Waverly project, Waverly and Beech Tree area project that we have had on the capital improvement plan. So just like normal this time of year, we are approving purchase orders and entering contracts, ordering material, but obviously you don't spend that money until the construction's done or the material gets delivered. And this should get us set up for the majority of our capital improvement plan for budget fiscal year 27.
Questions for Rob? Okay, Danielle, would you call the roll, please?
Knopf.
Yes.
Welling.
Yes.
Westbrook.
Yes.
Next item, Public Act 95. So I think everybody knows this. It also has LIHEAF, so Low Income Energy Assistance Fund. So every year in the spring, we have to make a determination if the Board of Light and Power would like to opt into the state program or opt out and do our own local program. Historically, we've always opted out. If you remember, last year was kind of a bigger discussion where they raised the state maximum allowable from $1 to $1.25. This year, the state allowable goes up to $1.50. And guess what the state did? They set it at $1.50 per meter per month. Like I said, last year, the state program allowed us to create our own program, but we were also allowed to continue to do turnoffs or disconnects for non-payment throughout the wintertime. So in order to make an informed decision, I brought some numbers here to give you an idea of what we've done to date since October 1st of 25 till date to February. We've had 144 customers, electric customers we've assisted for a little over $23,000. We've spent roughly $13,000 on heating assistance, so a total of $36,700 total we've spent. We've collected a little over $31,000. Keep in mind, we're still collecting this every month, so we'll continue to collect for needs for the year. But as you can probably imagine, we're probably past the big hump of heating assistance and so on and so forth. So I would expect our fund balance to probably grow a little bit. So we're kind of on pace to collect what we needed to do that. If you remember last year, the board approved I'll say calculation, how we figure out what we put on the bill or the line item for the bill for each calendar year. Last year, what we decided to do is we had about $150,000 already in the bank for the Hometown Helping Hands. We added it to that fund and then figured out the difference between the state requirement and what we had in the bank, and then divided it out to come up with a monthly charge. If you were to opt out, I would recommend we well, the rate to say we will do this is look at what we have left in the bank, figure out the difference between the $1.50 a month charge that the state would require, calculate the difference and put that as a line item on the bill. Last year we were at like 41 cents a month per meter. This year, it will be probably around 25 cents more because they raised the cap from $1.25 to $1.50. So we're collecting basically what we're spending, so I would expect it to go up around 25 cents. If you choose to opt out. If you choose to opt in, we don't have to do anything. We just tell the state we're opting in, and then we write a check to the state every month at $1.50 per customer, per meter per month to the state, and they administer the program. So with that, I need direction to let the state know which way the Board of Light and Power would like to go for heating season 27.
All that said, if I'm hearing you right, Rob, financially, it's best just to kind of stay like what we did last
Yeah, I think it makes sense where we don't have $1.50 per meter per month need in this community. So we basically have about a 40 cents a month per meter need in this community from what it looks like. So anything above and beyond that, we'd be shipping off to Lansing for them to
someone
do.
else's pockets. Yeah,
Yep.
got it.
Can I get a motion to opt out of Public Act 95?
Make the motion.
And any other questions on the? Daniel, would you call the roll, please?
No.
Yes.
Rowling?
Yes.
Chairperson Westbrook?
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the 27 draft power supply budget. So just a quick recap for everybody to remember the process we go through for budgeting every year. We start in March with the power supply budget because that's our largest expense. Next month, we will bring you our expense budget and capital improvement plan budget for your review. And then in May, we'll actually ask the board to approve the budget. So this is the first presentation of 3 to get us through our budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric. He's got a presentation to kind of walk you through what we're seeing for 27.
We kept the format almost exactly the same as last year, so this should look really familiar to you guys. Next slide, Austin. So big change this year is the first year Public Act 235 went into effect. So Public Act 235 has 2 components, main components at least. One is Section 28. That's the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard, which requires 15% of your energy to come from renewable resources, and that is from 2026 through 2029. In 2030, that number goes up to 50% renewable energy from 2030 to 2034. Now we're in really good shape for these first 2 phases, and I'll go into how we got there in a later slide. In 2035 and thereafter, you have to go to 60% renewable energy. That's the one that's kind of getting a lot of the attention right now. What's not getting a ton of the attention is Section 51, and that requires 80% clean energy, and clean energy is defined as combined cycle with carbon sequestration or nuclear, basically, are your 2 choices, from 2035 to 2039. And then 100% clean energy from 2040 and each year thereafter. So that word energy is really important because it doesn't mean capacity. And there's a reason for that. If you have 60% renewables, yes, there's some small capacity that comes with that, but not a lot, right? The sun doesn't shine in the wintertime, so they're not going to allocate you capacity for those resources. So if they made you do it all under the clean energy standard, all you would do is combine cycle with carbon sequestration or nuclear. You wouldn't even do renewables. So how do we solve for this capacity deficit with this renewable portfolio standard? Next slide, please. So currently, we're in great shape. The BLP is long on capacity, but that door is getting ready to close for us, and it's something we need to be planning for. So this past year, well, I should say in January 2026, for the planning year 26-27, which starts in June of 26 and goes through the end of May 27, we sold 20 megawatts of capacity at $7.50 per kW month. And that number will start making more sense as I work my way down the slide. Historically, we have bought capacity for this planning year. We buy capacity years in advance. You got capacity purchases going all the way out to 2040. So you ladder this stuff in. So we bought the capacity for planning year 26 and 27 years ago. And we paid pretty good prices for it. $3.70 per kW month up to $4.50 per kW month. So in some cases, you've doubled your money, and in other cases, not quite double, but came pretty close. That's changing in the upcoming years, and we are projected to start getting tight on capacity in planning year 2029 for the summer, fall, and spring, and I'll explain why we're starting to get tight in a second. And we're going to start falling significantly short in planning year 2030 and 2031. Now, all this we knew in advance, years in advance. We've developed these really nice runways to, take off on as we need to build and fill these holes. So we do have time, and but we have to start talking about it and start thinking down those lines. So what's changing in planning year 28, 29? Well, MISO has changed the allocation for renewable energy resources. They've changed how much capacity they've allocated wind and solar, and they have to, right? As your concentration gets more wind and more solar, and solar is not available in the winter, then you have to change how you do your capacity markets, where in the past we used to buy capacity for the whole year one time. MISO created a seasonal market, winter, spring, summer, fall, to account for this kind of changing energy resource mix. And so we are now in this seasonal capacity market. The first year for that was planning year 23-24. Now, MPPA historically has not made a sale in the seasonal capacity market. Their first sale was last spring, almost immediately after we gave this draft presentation of the power supply. They executed a seasonal capacity transaction. Now, the price in the non-summer months was substantially lower than the prices in the summer months. Kind of makes sense, right? If you have a lot of capacity now in the summer, well, most people's load is less in the winter. So there should be extra capacity. Now, if more baseload resources go and all we replace them with the summer, you may not see that dynamic. You might not see winter be the cheaper capacity. Even though load is down, you'll have less resources to pull from. Now, PPA is currently projecting future capacity prices at $7.50 per kW month for planning year 27 and $8.50 per kW month for planning year 31. So the days of $3.70, $4.50, they're gone. They're likely not coming back, at least for a while. And that's the projection going forward, is capacity is getting high and it's going to stay high. Now, interesting enough, we buy our capacity in the bilateral markets, kind of like what you do with energy, right? We do power purchase commitments for capacity. There's another avenue, and in fact, that avenue opens up today, which is the MISO auction. So today is the bid opening process for people to run in the auction. We do not do that. That's way volatile, extremely risky. If you've got extra capacity and you think you can make more money in the market, great. But we don't do that. Our goal is to stabilize our costs and not play the auction. And you'll see why in a second. So in planning year 2020 and 2021, that was the first time we hit cone. And at the time, cone was $7.98 per kW month. Now these numbers should kind of start making a little more sense. The auction publishes prices on dollar per megawatt day, but we don't think of things like that. I just put them in there so someone could cross-reference them if they ever wanted to look at the auction prices and say, well, how'd you get to that? Now, the next year after that, though, it dropped like a rock. It went to nothing. MISO created additional import capabilities, and it decimated the capacity market. But that didn't last long, because the next year after that, it shot not quite up to cone, but $7.34 per kW month. So pretty close. That's high. Then that was the first year of the seasonal capacity market. Interesting enough, the max seasonal price was in the fall at 47 cents. It's nothing. And then the next year after that, it was in the spring. It went up a little bit, but still $1.06 per kW month, not much. But last year was a whopper. It made cone look really cheap. And this is why we don't buy from the auction. $20.66 per kW month. So,
Eric, can you explain what cone is?
Cone, yeah, that's a good point. Cone is the cost of new entry. So that is your reference point to put in. Usually it's a simple cycle combustion turbine. It's the cheapest resource you can possibly put in at some level of scale. Does that make sense, Cone? Okay, sounds good. Good. These markets are actually set to trigger you to say you might want to start considering building this. These are the resources or these are the market conditions you're supposed to use to say when do I pull the trigger on building something if I'm going to build? Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit. Now we're going to shift from capacity to energy. Now, we have been on a really aggressive campaign to add renewable resources. And if you go back to our communications, our approach is to balance reliability, affordability, and sustainability. So it's a three-legged stool. Well, a third of a three-legged stool is 33.3%, right? Well, that's about where we're at with renewable resources. So we've done a great job on the sustainability leg of the stool. And in fact, this fiscal year coming up, we're going to be spending slightly above $5 million on just renewable energy purchases. So to put that in perspective, your total energy costs are about $15 million. So 5 million of that are just going to be in renewable energy contracts. Now, because we are getting to such a high level, and we knew this was probably going to be a tipping point, balancing between the day ahead and the real-time markets, that's really growing important now that annual renewable energy purchases are approaching 30%. We are a little more at the mercy of the day ahead and the real-time markets if the renewables don't show up. And if you take yourself back to, I think it was last month, we talked about Winter Storm Fern. The renewables didn't show up. So there was a lot of exposure to the day ahead and the real-time markets because of that. Now, because of this fact that renewables may not show up as they're forecasted, this year coming up is the first year that MPPA is forecasting an intermittency risk, which is where they're putting some dollar value to forecasts might not meet actual conditions. And so we've incorporated that into the budget. We've never had that before. And really, when your penetration was small, 8, 10%, it's negligible. You don't notice it. But you get into 30%, yeah, you're kind of starting to see it now. Now, let's talk about renewable energy credits and compliance with the state rules, because we are in really good shape for that portion of the Public Act. And we're projected to be in compliance out to 2036 based on current electric sales. So if electric sales go up, you might have to go out and do some additional renewable energy or credits. Electric sales go down, it'll just push you a little further out. But if sales stay pretty consistent to what they are, we're in solid shape for almost a decade. So great. That's fantastic. That gives us a lot of time to continue our process of incrementally adding these things through the years so we don't ever have to go too big into any one project only to have it 20 years from now fall off the books. And now we're short. The renewable energy credits in excess of the 15% requirement up to 2029, we are banking those. And then we're using those to retire in future years. So we're taking this early, this kind of aggressive approach we've taken. We're taking the excess, banking it so that we can use it for future compliance years. And on top of that, in December 2024, the board approved a power purchase commitment for energy, not renewable energy, but energy, and a power purchase commitment that also came with RECs, about 28,000 RECs annually from 2027 through 2035. And so what we're doing with those is we're going to retire those first and save the project dedicated RECs for compliance with those calendar years 2030 to 2035, which we are allowed to do. So that's we were great by stepping into renewable energy projects early, and then we're purchasing some over-the-counter RECs to maximize the impact of those. Let's talk about our landfill gas, because that'll be important in another slide. It's starting to decrease in 2027, but not by huge amounts. We buy about 20,000 megawatt hours a year. We're going to see about 6,400 megawatt hours drop off in 2027. We're going to see another 6,100 megawatt hours drop off in 2028. And then it's going to hold steady for 2029 to 2031 at about 7,400. The good news about that is that's your most expensive energy you buy at about $110 per megawatt hour. Next slide, please. Why that's important is solar projects are getting more expensive. The $35 a megawatt hour that we used to subscribe when Assembly Solar One went in 2020, those are now pushing into the mid 60s, which is what Whitetail Solar was. That just went online in November. So it's quite a big change. So landfill gas is dropping off. It's expensive power. Solar power is going up, but thankfully it'll ease that burden a little bit because landfill gas is dropping off. But we've been really aggressive in the last 6 years on adding solar resources. Wind, it had a good push in between 2012 to 2020, but that is getting some pushback on all these wind generators that are out there. So you're not seeing the public temperament as favorable for wind as it used to be, and actually starting to see some pushback on solar lately too. So it's a good thing we did the projects when we did. We've got 6 projects in, 5 are completed. 1 will be completed at the end of this year, which will be Hart. And it's a pretty good sized project. So we're at 26.6% for calendar year 25. I think for fiscal year where we're at, we're a little higher than that right now. But when everything is said and done and this last project goes in, you're going to be about 22 megawatts of peak nameplate generation for just solar and 8 megawatts peak nameplate generation for wind. So you're talking 30 megawatts, and then you add the little bit of landfill gas that we'll still have. You're at 32 megawatts. Well, your average load is 33. So for a utility our size, that's quite a bit of renewable energy. And actually in a fair short amount of time. Again, just to reiterate, we're banking these credits from these early initiatives so that it carries us forward into these future compliance years. Next slide, please. So let's talk about total energy. This is all in bilateral agreements, renewable energy, net balancing energy. And the threshold of 300,000 does have some significance because that's what you used to be at historically. We've seen those sales and purchases drop off. The reason why is we've had some fairly large customers change their operations and one close their door and sell. And so just to put it in perspective, in September 2023, we had our 3rd largest customer cease operations. That resulted in a reduction of about 7,700 megawatt hours. There's a little bit of electrical load there, but it's really not much. New owners are in the building. They're looking to reestablish industrial operations. It's all good, just hadn't happened yet. 2026, when we discussed this last year, we were notified by another large customer that 2 of their facilities were going to significantly change their operations by the end of the year. Well, we've seen that now. It's there. If you remember last year, we said we're going to take them to 0 in July and just assume there's nothing because we just don't know what, where they're going to land and when exactly which month it's going to happen. It looks like they've pretty much settled on that. We met with them last week, talked to them a little bit, and it sounds one facility changed hands and the other one is steady to where it's going to be. So they look like they've settled out at about 3,600 megawatt hours when historically they were just shy of 9,000 megawatt hours. So that's pretty much your decrease from where you were, is just largely those 3 facilities. Now, something to take into account, which is why we added the note, is beginning this year, another Public Act 229, requires an energy savings equal to 1.5% of total retail electric sales. So how that's going to impact your future sales going forward and your future purchases, it's unknown. The program's just taking off this year. And, beginning of the years are always slow start. They always were when we had Franklin Energy manage the program. So it'll be interesting to see how that lands. So 3 buckets for energy: bilateral agreements, renewable energy, and net balancing energy. Next slide, please. So what does all that cost on top of our fixed cost? About $20 million a year for everything. So very similar graph. The only difference is this one's not megawatt hours. This one is dollars. And there's one additional component in there called fixed power supply. And fixed power supply includes capacity, transmission, MISO and MPPA overheads, but MISO and MPPA overheads are a very small portion of that. It's largely just capacity and transmission of what goes into the red. So we did mention that energy prices, they are going up, but it's very gradual. It's not extreme. I mentioned already that the solar contracts are nearly double what they were in 2020. However, the increase in solar costs are going to be partially offset by reduced purchases in landfill gas energy. So no large concerns there. The two bottom ones, though, there is a concern on those, and it is growing. We'll see how this plays out in the future. But our monthly fixed costs are projected to increase in future years due to regional capacity and transmission cost pressures. So capacity costs for the upcoming fiscal year, they're going to look really good and they're going to look low. And that's because you're long and you're selling that capacity at a much higher price than you paid for it. But as I said, that door is closing and that's going to change in the future if those capacity prices stay high, and that's what you end up paying. On top of that, the transmission costs are projected to rise to increase, or they're projected to increase at an accelerator rate due to MISO's long-range transmission planning initiatives funding major grid expansion projects across the region. So if capacity costs go up and transmission costs go up, your fixed costs go up. Okay. So what does that mean on a dollar per megawatt hour basis? For this fiscal year, not much. It's going to be relatively steady. We came to you last year and we said we think we're going to land somewhere around $73 a megawatt hour. It looks like for this upcoming fiscal year, you're going to be at about the same, about $73 per megawatt hour. But it has gone up significantly since we closed the steam plant. And quite frankly, we took good advantage of the market by closing the steam plant when we did. If we didn't have those years, you wouldn't be in the financial position you're in today. So good decisions were made. We definitely enjoyed some very low prices on the market. It's just the market. It's changing. So in January 2026, this is a really important point. We haven't seen this before. So the 12-month rolling average for power supply purchase cost increased from $70.25 per megawatt hour to $71.73. Remember, we showed you what the impact was from Winter Storm Furman, and it was pretty significant. That 1 month event changed your 12-month rolling average from $70.25 to $71.73. That's a change of $1.48 in just a month, from 1 month impact. We haven't seen that before. Power supply cost adjustment factor. This is a note just to help you try to make sense of the difference. Now, that power supply cost adjustment factor, that is not calculated on the amount of energy you buy. It's calculated on the cost for the energy you buy divided by the 12-month rolling electric sales. So it's a slightly lower number. So you're always going to see that PSCA with the base on top of be just a little higher than what you see on this graph. And hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And all we're doing with the PSCA is to reconcile the difference between the base power supply cost, including the electric rates, and the actual cost of power supply. So I guess it was 2 years ago? No, last year. Last year, we changed the base power supply cost embedded in the electric rates to $69 per megawatt hour. But that was from an original amount of $59, which had been that way for quite some time. If your actual power supply costs exceed the base cost, then the difference is recovered through the PSCA as a charge. If the costs fall below the base power supply cost, then the difference is credited back to the customer through the same mechanism. Next slide. Yeah.
Just, I guess I'll just help you guys. What does that mean when we talk about the base and dollars per megawatt hour? $10 per megawatt hour equals a penny in our rates. So to kind of give you how you correlate that between what our customers see. So if you remember back when we changed the rates,
That again, Rob?
$10 per megawatt hour. So look at when we went from $59 to $69 when we changed our base rates last year, that is equal to 1 penny per kilowatt hour. Make sense? So up top where he says $1.48, that would be 0.01 penny. Does that make sense? So that's how you can kind of correlate that between what we're talking at a high level grid numbers to what our customers are seeing. So remember, $10 per megawatt hour equals a penny.
This is just an illustration to help you kind of wrap your mind around where all these costs go. So last year, we projected $20 million in power supply. It's about the same this year, but some of those shapes in the pie have changed a little bit. We said our renewable energy is going up, so you would expect that percentage of the pie to get a little bigger, right? From 24% to 26% in the previous fiscal year to this fiscal year. You'd expect your bilateral purchases, which is the red, to go down a little bit, 36% to 33%, because you're offsetting a little bit of renewables, and you have a little more in the net balancing. We typically start tightening that up when we get into the prompt year. So we go into the prompt year with some flexibility in the net balancing, and then we start doing some bilateral agreements. Think of your hedges, right? When Rob gives you your monthly report from MPPA, there's a bandwidth of how much they want you to be hedged. That's really what that is. Now you'll notice on the difference between the two pie charts, our capacity number has changed quite a bit from 12% to 8%. That's the capacity you're selling. If we don't do something in that area in future years, that'll grow to a bigger percentage. The transmission, you can see it's growing 10% to 13%, and the admin is that small orange pie. It's really just not much. It's 2% of the total cost, and that's been pretty consistent for quite some time. So this is just to give you a kind of an idea of out of the 20 million, how does it all break down? And that's all we have. Happy to take any questions.
You want to start with you? Any questions on the presentation?
Rob, you mentioned this is kind of the first salvo, so remind me what the next step is next month.
So next step, next month is we will have our expense budget, our O&M type stuff, as well as our capital improvement plan coming to you for review. And then the following month, May, we'll present all of this again. We'll update the numbers and everything we have here as we move the stuff from balancing to bilats, et cetera, for you to actually vote on to approve. So tonight, there's no action required. But this is just the first presentation of three. Next one will be Lynn will be giving that, going over our normal operating expenses and our basically our construction budget. And then Lynn will go over in May combine both of the presentations and refresh you, and then ask for your approval. Eric, I got one more thing I think we should go back. If you go back to the capacity slide, Austin. Once again, I'm trying to help you guys wrap when I talk about keep going back. We're talking about KW per month. Okay. So I'm just trying to give you an idea how does this correlate to what our customers see, or how does this affect our budget? So we talked about $7 or basically $8 a KW month equaling cone, right? And so that's cost of new entry. So what they're trying to tell you is what you need to do to build there. So if we take something and let's say you look at our power supply portfolio up above, that was part of the MPPA process, you're roughly about 10 to 15 megawatts short on capacity. So I think, Eric, you did the math on that. What does that come out to at an annual cost at dollars a KW month, or $750? Didn't you have that written down?
Yeah, no, I didn't bring it, but I didn't have my phone on me either.
So you can do it simple. The simple math is KW month. We need to convert that to megawatts, right? That's 1,000. And then month is simple. There's 12 months. So if you multiply by 1,000 and by 12, that's how much you can see per megawatt you change. So if I get my little phone out here. Let's just take $8 a KW month. I multiply that by 1,000, right? Because that's to a megawatt. That's the 8,000. Multiply by that by 12 is $96,000 per megawatt. Let's say I do 10 megawatts, 960,000, basically $1 million for 10 megawatts. So that's why we've talked about these capacity prices. What does that mean to our power supply budget? So when you see that we're short up above, if we're talking about that, we got to go buy that. That's $1 million purchase. Or if we have it to sell, that's $1 million sale. So as you can imagine, being short or long in there when the prices are this big can really swing our power supply budget. I think that's the point Eric was trying to get there is, right now we're long, so we're selling. And hey, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right? We're making money. We didn't do that on purpose. It's just a position we found ourselves in. We're going to be on the other side of that spectrum in 2030. So we need to start thinking, how do we control those costs? How do we do that? Do we go out and try to purchase it and see if we can rent it? Do we build? Do we find other projects we can participate in? Once again, and we talked about it before, it's an all of the above approach. We need to be looking at everything, but this is one of the costs Eric's talking about that has gone up significantly that will affect us in 5 years. It's not today, but 4 years from now, this will be, if we do nothing, we could leave ourselves open a real big hole. So.
Questions, Mike?
Pretty complicated and it's pretty dynamic. It changes a lot real quick. That Public Act 235 really kind of throws a screwball into it, sort of, doesn't it? Makes it a lot more complicated than it was before.
Makes it more complicated, but we started early and we've been working at it a little at a time.
We're ahead of the game.
We're ahead of the game.
We're at 26% now, and we only need to be at 15 for.
Well, 2029.
We're good to go, and then we can bank those recs. And
So with the current bank we have and our projected sales and purchases, all that, when we look out, we're good till 2036. That's assuming we do nothing, which, let's be honest, that's not going to be the case, right? I bring you guys stuff all the time. So we're going to be looking, MPPA is always looking at the market. How do we plan? Utilities, I just talked to one of the city council members today, and I gave him the analogy I've told you guys a lot. We are like a freighter ship going down the channel. We're a big entity, we're a utility. We don't turn fast. You need to plot your course and maintain your course. Now you got a course correct here and there, but we want to stay in the middle of the channel. What does that mean? You got to be looking out. You can't be looking over here or here and hand over hand on a wheel, right? Small corrections, plan ahead, get it done. It doesn't happen overnight. So the same thing about the 235, right? We saw this coming. We've been buying renewables and we acted early. We were proactive, and that put us in a position to be able to be in a good position until 2036. If we would have just sat on our hands and said, well, maybe they won't do anything, maybe they will do something, and we don't know, then we're scrambling.
well, we're sitting good on recs.
Correct.
But the elephant in the room is probably capacity.
Capacity and transmission are the two things. Capacity, we have ability to do something a little bit about. Transmission,
The mercy.
we're kind of at the mercy, we're part of the grid. The good news is we own transmission. So as transmission costs go up, so does our
Yeah.
revenue share a little bit. So the way to control your costs or hedge against that is investing in transmission. That's something we're looking at MPP as well. How can we invest in transmission projects? Because if we can invest in it, then that controls our costs. That's our hedge against it, right? Because as the cost goes up, our return will go up. So we're looking at all those things and trying to plan out years in advance to make sure we get it. Proactive planning. That's what it's about. Proactive planning and managing risk.
Capacity is probably the one that's first and foremost should be on our radar.
Well, probably. Yeah, that's the one we need to be looking at. Because transmission is going to be there. We have concerns that we talk about this auction. We have concerns there won't be anything at the auction. We've already had signals from 2 of the 3 players that they're out of the game. So we need to be looking at how we're going to solve for that problem.
Very dynamic.
Yep.
Yes.
Putting this together, Eric, I mean, the purchase power is a lion's share of our budget, so the biggest.
Complicated.
That tonight, really, it's good to hear our costs are flat year to year. I mean, that's a great news, but to me, this is a strategic planning input. And we're doing good on renewables, but we've got some issues with the three-legged stool to address it, strategic planning, so.
It's about rate stability. That's the name of the game, is how do you maintain stable rates? No one. So we talk about these auctions and day ahead price or the real-time markets for energy. Our goal is to try to stay out of there and keep those prices stable. That way we can plan, if we can plan and hold them stable, our customers can plan and hold their costs stable. Ultimately, if we miss the boat on this, our customers have to pay. So it's very important to be long-term objective planning.
Nothing on the chairman's report, other than I was gonna thank you for everybody for the, Kurt mentioned he walked in the Harbor Island or the Harbor Drive undergrounding looks fantastic. Walk the dog down there, was delighted to see, I mean, it's what, don't notice the poles until they're gone, I guess, how good it looks. And it looks fantastic, so make sure. The business.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to remind everybody about. So, May 7th, we have a joint city council BLP meeting. So make sure that's on your calendars. Also in May,
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, City Hall. We'll send out information and reminders as we get closer. Also in May, we have our strategic planning workshop on the 18th in the afternoon. I believe that's on your calendars already as well. May's a busy month.
12th to the 18th. 18th, okay. I got both.
Yep, the 18th. Once again, May 14th is MPPA's strategic, or stakeholders meeting in Grand Rapids. I think you've all had a link to that. If you'd like to register, please do so. And also I sent an email a while back about the APPA National Conference. It's in Boston this year. That's June 28th through July 1st. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. We can get you registered as well. And one last piece of news from the staff is Lynn has decided to retire. So if you get a chance, tell her congratulations and give her well wishes. And she's going to help us get through our budgeting process this year. And then be on her way in June, just in time for the good, beautiful weather. So congratulations to Lynn.
Congratulations, Lynn. Public comments, anybody? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make the motions.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed. Meeting adjourned.